The history of Syracuse is the history of the Greeks in Sicily. Founded by Corinthian colonists in the 8th century BC, Syracuse became the largest and richest city in the classical Greek world, dwarfing even Athens. In some periods, it ruled most of Sicily. Its armies campaigned as far as the Bay of Naples and the suburbs of Carthage. It was home to Archimedes, Timoleon, and, for a few years, Plato. The ruins scattered through modern Siracusa bear witness to the size and wealth of the greatest Greek city in the West. Syracuse was founded on Ortygia, an island poised between two superb natural harbors. The larger of these is here in front of us. Just on shore was a large natural spring, the so-called Fountain of Arethusa. These days it's filled with papyrus plants and with geese and ducks. There was a myth, told most famously by Virgil, that the nymph Arethusa was bathing near Olympia in Greece when she was pursued by the river god Alpheus. She dove into the sea and surfaced here, but Alpheus pursued her, and a mysterious conduit was believed to connect this spring with his river back in Greece. It was said that a cup thrown into the Alpheus surfaced long after in the Arethusa spring. This is the Temple of Apollo. It's one of the oldest Doric temples anywhere, dating to about 560 BC. You can tell how old it is from its odd proportions. The columns are squat and close together. An inscription on the eastern stylobate names the builder as Cleomenes, son of Cneidius. The building became a church in the Middle Ages, whence the door you see in the former cella. Later it was a mosque, and finally a prison under the Spanish. It was freed from the surrounding buildings in the 1930s. The Piazza Duomo is lined by Baroque buildings. One of these, just in front of us, is the Town Hall, originally a 17th century seminary. It stands over the ruins of an Ionic temple dedicated to Artemis that was probably never finished. Right across the street was a Doric temple of Athena, and this, remarkably, is still standing as the Duomo of Syracuse. The current facade dates to the 18th century. The building behind is more than 2 millennia older. Originally, it was a temple of Athena, built on the orders of the tyrant Galon to celebrate the great victory over the Carthaginians at Himera in 480 BC. It was a peripteral Doric building, with 14 columns on the long sides and 6 on the short. The doors were inlaid with gold and ivory. A magnificent marble statue of Athena stood in the cella. It was converted into a church in late antiquity, and then into a mosque after the Arab conquest of Sicily. The Normans made it a church again, and it has remained one ever since. You can still see the columns of the temple along the Via Minerva, crowned by battlements from the Muslim period. The great earthquake of 1693 left the columns on this end looking a bit precarious. When the temple was converted into a church, the spaces between the columns were filled with masonry. The former cella became the nave, and arches were opened in the masonry to connect the cella with the aisles inside the newly filled colonnade. The baptismal font is a Greek crater from the 5th century BC, made of Parian marble. The bronze lions that support it are medieval. Behind are fragments of mosaic from the Norman period. The theater of Syracuse was one of the largest anywhere in the Greek world. It was pillaged for its stone in the 16th century to build new city walls, and only those parts that were cut into native rock survive. A theater has stood on this spot since the 6th century BC. Aeschylus staged 2 of his tragedies here. In its current form, the theater dates to the 3rd century BC, judged from the inscriptions along the diazoma that name sections of seating after family members of the tyrant Hiero II. The stage building is long gone. It was probably most elaborate in the Roman period, when the theater was used for some of the spectacles that were later moved to the amphitheater. The rocky slopes above the theater are pockmarked with tombs, which range in date from the Hellenistic to the Byzantine period. Among them is the so-called Via dei Sepolcri, the Street of Tombs. The ruts you can see were worn in the early modern period by carts going to and from mills that were built into the fabric of the theater. Here, serenaded by the sound of a rushing spring, is an especially well-preserved tomb. Each of these niches held a burial. All were robbed many centuries ago. This is all that remains of the colossal altar of Hiero II. At more than 600 feet long, 70 feet wide, and originally about 40 feet high, this was by far the largest altar anywhere in the ancient Greek world. Like the theater, it was plundered of its stone by the Spanish in the 16th century. The scale, however, can still be appreciated. An entire hecatomb, a sacrifice of 100 bulls, could be offered here at once. The amphitheater was plundered for its stone at the same time as the theater and great altar. Little more than the parts cut into the bedrock have survived. Originally, however, it was about the size of the famous Verona Amphitheater. The subterranean chamber beneath the arena likely held scenery and stage equipment. The so-called Latomia del Paradiso was the largest of the city's quarries, an awesome testament to the amount of building done in classical Syracuse. After the quarry fell out of use, it became part of the city's defenses. Most notoriously, it served as a prison for the 7,000 captives seized in the disastrous aftermath of the Athenian attempt to take Syracuse during the Peloponnesian War. These days, the bottom of the quarry is a pleasantly shaded garden filled with flowering trees. Here and there, however, spires of rock shoot up to remind us of this place's original use. The scale of these fallen stones is staggering. Each is the size of a house. And the rock face, looming beyond, is well over 100 feet high. Here and there, caverns were cut into the walls, apparently following veins and pockets of the best stone. This one now houses a faintly puzzling art installation. Let's follow the path around, just for a sense of the place. Every block, every flake, every atom of stone cut here was done with hammer and chisel. Pretty astonishing. The most famous of the caverns is the so-called ear of Dionysius. It's about 200 feet long by 70 feet high. The cave's odd shape, which amplifies every noise, gave rise to the legend that the tyrant Dionysius would press his ear to a crack in the ceiling to hear all the whispers of the prisoners confined within. Only a story, of course, but an evocative one, and a fitting place to end our tour of classical Syracuse. Thanks for watching.